This is the untold story of the pirates who ruled the seas, striking fear into empires and rewriting history. But what caused their meteoric rise and their inevitable downfall? Let's uncover the truth behind the Golden Age of Piracy. The Golden Age of Piracy wasn't just a wild chapter in history. It was a direct rebellion against oppressive empires, brutal naval traditions, and suffocating poverty. From 1650 to 1730, pirates carved their names into history with blood, gold, and rum. But how did these seafaring rebels rise to such infamy? And what forces brought them crashing down? Let's dive into the rise and fall of the Golden Age of Piracy, where danger and adventure collided on the high seas. Picture this: the year is 1650, and you're a sailor, struggling to survive in the harsh realities of naval life. It wasn't glamorous. You woke up before sunrise, worked through the brutal heat of the day, and then endured a cold night on the unforgiving sea. You were paid meager wages, and if you made any mistakes, the punishment was severe. Navies were cutthroat. With every ship carrying vital cargo, naval commanders treated their crews like tools rather than people. If a sailor wasn't up to par, he was thrown overboard or, at best, demoted. And if you didn't follow orders to the letter, you were likely punished with lashes or worse. But for many sailors, the worst part was the constant war. During the late 1600s, European empires like Spain, England, and Portugal were locked in bitter competition for control over vast territories in the New World. For sailors, this meant endless voyages filled with danger and little to no reward. When wars ended, many of these sailors had no purpose. They were often left stranded with nothing but their skills, some rusted weapons, and a dire need for money. Some sought work as merchants or dock workers, but others, they looked to the high seas to carve out their own fortunes. This, however, was a dangerous game. Piracy didn't just happen overnight. It was a product of its time, a direct reaction to oppressive governments, harsh naval regimes, and the lure of wealth. And where better for pirates to find freedom than in the isolated, lawless corners of the Caribbean? The Bahamas became a hot spot for pirate activity, particularly the city of Nassau. In the early 1700s, Nassau was a place where pirates could operate with little interference. But it wasn't just the isolation that made it a pirate haven. Nassau, like other pirate havens, offered something that sailors didn't get in the Navy: freedom. Pirates set their own rules. They created their own pirate code, which was far more democratic than anything found in the military or imperial navies. Pirates treated each other as equals. Crewmates voted on everything, from who the captain would be to how the spoils would be divided. The pirate code established strict rules, such as the fair division of loot, with a portion set aside for the wounded, a ban on violence among crew members, and most surprisingly, the promise of compensation for injuries. Compare that to the brutal world of naval warfare, where any mistake could cost a sailor his life. Pirates found solidarity and a sense of community. It was for many a much more humane and certainly more profitable life than that of an ordinary sailor. Famous pirates of the Golden Age. Before long, certain pirates became as famous as the empires they were raiding. These pirates were more than just criminals. They were symbols of defiance, and their names have endured throughout history. Blackbeard, Edward Teach. Blackbeard is perhaps the most iconic pirate of all time. He was a man whose very presence sent shivers down the spine of any sailor unlucky enough to cross him. Blackbeard's appearance alone made him terrifying. He was over 6 feet tall, had a black beard that reached down to his chest, and often tied slow-burning fuses into his beard and hat, creating a fiery, smoke-filled aura around him. His ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, became legendary. Blackbeard didn't just rely on force, he relied on fear. He would sail into ports and blockade the harbors, knowing that the very sight of his ship was enough to make any crew surrender without a fight. Anne Bonny and Mary Read. These two women became famous for breaking the mold in a world dominated by men. Anne Bonny, born in Ireland, was raised as a strong-willed, rebellious young woman. When she joined a pirate crew, she didn't try to hide her identity. She was a pirate through and through. Mary Read, who dressed as a man to disguise her true identity, was equally fearless. These women showed that piracy wasn't just for men. They became respected, if not feared, among their fellow pirates. Bartholomew Roberts, Black Bart. Roberts is often considered the most successful pirate in history. Over the course of his career, he captured more than 400 ships, more than any other pirate. Unlike most pirates, Roberts was more organized and strategic. He knew how to run a crew, and he understood that piracy was as much about logistics and planning as it was about fighting. He even had the foresight to dress his crew in matching uniforms, creating an air of discipline and authority that struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. Pirates didn't just raid anyone. They targeted the very heart of the empire's wealth. The most prized targets were Spanish treasure fleets. These fleets carried gold, silver, and precious gems from the New World to Spain, often in heavily guarded ships. The Spanish were notorious for their wealth. Spain had established a vast colonial empire in the Americas, and the gold and silver that flowed out of the New World made the Spanish crown one of the wealthiest in Europe. Pirates knew that if they could intercept just one of these treasure fleets, they would be set for life. It wasn't just about the loot. It was a direct strike against the Spanish Empire's economic power. The Caribbean was filled with treasure, and pirates were determined to claim it for themselves. By the 1710s, piracy was no longer a minor nuisance. It was a full-blown threat. Pirates weren't just operating on the fringes anymore. They were targeting the lifeblood of European empires, merchant fleets, trade routes, and naval convoys. This wasn't the way it was supposed to be. The empires could no longer afford to ignore the pirates. Britain and Spain, along with their allies, launched a coordinated campaign to wipe out piracy once and for all. They sent out massive fleets of warships with one goal: to hunt down pirates. The pirates, once in control of vast swathes of the Caribbean and the Atlantic, now found themselves outmatched and outnumbered. The rise of new military technologies, such as more powerful cannons and better trained crews, gave the empires a significant advantage. Pirates, on the other hand, were disorganized and lacked the resources to defend against well-equipped naval forces. Nassau, once a thriving pirate haven, was raided by British forces in 1718. The city was captured, and the pirates who remained there were either killed or forced to flee. As the pirate havens fell, pirates had fewer places to hide. The empires offered pardons to any pirate who would lay down their arms. Some pirates, like Benjamin Hornigold, took the deal, but many others chose to fight to the bitter end. Charles Vane, one of the most notorious pirates of the time, rejected the pardon and was eventually captured and hanged. For many pirates, death was the only option left. The turning point for piracy came in 1722, when Bartholomew Roberts was killed at the Battle of Cape Lopez. His death marked the end of an era. Roberts had been one of the most successful and respected pirates in history, and his demise left a massive void in the pirate world. Without strong leadership, pirates quickly began to disband. After Roberts's death, piracy gradually faded into the background. The British Navy continued its pursuit of pirates, and other pirate strongholds fell. By the 1730s, the Golden Age of Piracy was officially over. The Golden Age of Piracy was a brief, violent, and extraordinary chapter in history. For a short time, pirates ruled the seas, defying governments and empires with their daring raids and audacious lifestyle. They built pirate havens, created their own codes of conduct, and stood for freedom in a world ruled by oppressive empires. But their time was always limited. The same forces that had once given them their power, the vast oceans, the empire's greed, and their lack of unity, eventually turned against them. The rise and fall of piracy reminds us that no force, no matter how rebellious, can last forever. And as the empire tightened its grip, the pirate dream faded away. Today, pirates are seen as legends, figures of adventure and rebellion in books and movies. But the real story, it's darker, more brutal, and far more fascinating than any fictional tale. Want to uncover more secrets of the high seas? Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.